Good morning. We will continue with Unit 3. And as I told you, this unit consists of two stories and two poems. We have already dealt with the first story. It was about a young seagull who was so reluctant to fly. And we saw how the mother bird tactfully dealt with the situation and finally made her young one fly. And now the next story is The Black Aeroplane, written by Frederick Forsyth. You might be familiar with the author. He is an English author and journalist, and has written a number of thriller novels. Being a journalist, his works are noted for their journalistic style. Because he is a journalist, he used to write reports, and that was reflected in most of his works. And his works are also noted for their fast-paced plots. He didn't tell a dragging story. It was moving quickly, fast-paced plots. And his other works include The Day of the Jackal, The Dogs of War, Avenger, etc. And now in this story, The Dark Aeroplane, he tells us about a man who happens to face an unexpected situation while he was flying a Dakota aeroplane. And now to the details of a Dakota aeroplane. It is a military transport aircraft used for military purposes. And it was extensively used by the Allies during the World War II. Allies includes countries like Britain, France, the Soviet Union, and the US and China. And Dakota aeroplane has a speed of 370 kilometers per hour and a wingspan of 29 meters. And this is a Dakota aeroplane. You get a closer look here. Now you can see a Dakota aeroplane in flight. So now you might be familiar with the Dakota aeroplane. And to the lesson now, The Black Aeroplane. So Frederick Forsyth in this story tells us about a young man who's flying a Dakota aeroplane from Paris to England. He is returning home after a very long time, and so he's a bit excited and he is impatiently waiting to reach his destination so that he can be rejoined with his family members. And as you see, in the beginning, the flight is a very smooth one. The sky is very clear. He can see the city in illuminated because it is almost midnight, and the flight is very smooth. And all on a sudden, he faces something very, really unexpected. And what is that? That is what you are going to see in the lesson. So, The Black Aeroplane by Frederick Forsyth. The moon was coming up in the east behind me, and stars were shining in the clear sky above me. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. I was happy to be alone high up above the sleeping countryside. I was flying my old Dakota aeroplane over France back to England. I was dreaming of my holiday and looking forward to being with my family. I looked at my watch. 1:30 in the morning. I should call Paris Control soon, I thought. So though he had a smooth flight, an easy flight, he has to be in touch with the control tower. Control tower. It is the control tower in Paris. A control tower is a building at an airport, from which instructions will be given to the aircrafts which are taking off and landing there. So he is contacting people at the control tower. I should call Paris Control soon, I thought. As I looked down past the nose of the aeroplane, I saw the lights of a big city in front of me. I switched on the radio and said, Paris Control, Dakota DS-088 here. Can you hear me? I am on my way to England. Over. So that was the message that he passed to the control tower. And he just wanted to get directions regarding his flight, the directions in which he should direct his plane. The voice from the radio answered me immediately. DS-088, I can hear you. You ought to turn 12 degrees west now. DS-088, over. So he gets back the message, the reply. I checked the map and the compass, switched over to my second and last fuel tank, and turned the Dakota 12 degrees west towards England. So he checked the map and the compass. Compass is not a compass that you use during maths class. This compass is a navigation aid used mostly by light aircrafts, not the complex ones, but the light ones, there's the small ones, and it is used to show the route, the correct route and the direction in which he has to go. So he checked the map and the compass and switched over to the last fuel tank. So he is running on the last fuel tank, and the fuel is very low, and turned the Dakota 12 degrees west towards England. I'll be in time for breakfast, he thought, a good, big English breakfast. Everything was going well. It was an easy flight. So just as we all feel when we are away from home for a long time, we long to have the homely treats which is made by our beloved ones. So here he too felt the same feeling, and he was impatiently waiting to reach his destination. Paris was about 150 kilometers behind me when I saw the clouds. So he had gone around 150 kilometers from Paris, and then he spotted something, storm clouds. They were huge. They looked like black mountains standing in front of me across the sky. I knew I could not fly up over them, and I did not have enough fuel to fly around them to the north or south. So he very well knew his condition. Storm clouds, and that too, it was a huge amount of storm clouds, and so he couldn't go through it. Either he has to fly over these storm clouds, or he has to avoid these clouds and go a longer route. So, since it was a light aircraft, a small one, he couldn't fly that much high. He couldn't access that much height. And the other reason, he was on his last fuel tank, and so he couldn't fly for too long. So he didn't have any other alternative but to return back to Paris. I ought to go back to Paris, I thought, but I wanted to get home. I wanted that breakfast. So he was impatiently waiting to meet his relatives or his family members at home, and so he couldn't think of returning back to Paris, and so he decided to take a risk. I'll take the risk, I thought, and flew that old Dakota straight into the storm. Inside the clouds, everything was suddenly black. It was impossible to see anything outside the aeroplane. The old aeroplane jumped and twisted in the air. I looked at the compass. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was turning round and round and round. It was dead. It would not work. The other instruments were suddenly dead too. I tried the radio. Paris Control, can you hear me? There was no answer. The radio was dead too. I had no radio, no compass, and I could not see where I was. I was lost in the storm, so he could not do anything. He knew that that is the end of him, and so he was ready to face whatever is going to happen. And so finally, when he gave up all his hope, something happened there. Then in the black clouds, quite near me, I saw another aeroplane. It had no lights on its wings, but I could see it flying next to me through the storm. I could see the pilot's face turned towards me. I was very glad to see another person. He lifted one hand and waved. "Follow me," he was saying. "Follow me." He knows that I am lost, I thought. He's trying to help me. So he would go after anyone who would come there at that time, because he had lost all hope. And so it is at that time he happened to see another aeroplane with another man guiding him. And so he followed him without another thought. He turned his aeroplane slowly to the north in front of my Dakota so that it would be easier for me to follow him. I was very happy to go behind the strange aeroplane like an obedient child. After half an hour, the strange aeroplane was still there in front of me in the clouds. So he flew following the aeroplane for almost half an hour, and still it was going in front of him. And so we knew that the man was on his last fuel tank, and so he couldn't fly for so long. So again he became tensed, and he began to panic. There was only enough fuel in the old Dakota's last tank to fly for 5 or 10 minutes more. I was starting to feel frightened again, but then he started to go down, and I followed through the storm. And so immediately after half an hour, he noticed that the aeroplane that was going in front of him started going down, and he followed the aeroplane which was going in front of him. Suddenly I came out of the clouds and saw 2 long straight lines of lights in front of me. So he noticed that 2 long straight lines of light could be seen, and that is nothing but a runway. It was a runway, an airport. I was safe. I turned to look for my friend in the black aeroplane, but the sky was empty. There was nothing there. The black aeroplane was gone. I could not see it anywhere. So he checked for the aeroplane that has guided him safely to this airport, but he could not see it anywhere. I landed and was not sorry to walk away from the old Dakota near the control tower. So he landed the plane safely in the airport, and he was not sorry to walk away from the old Dakota. What does it suggest? He was so happy to get out of that Dakota where he saw death face to face. And so he was much relieved now, and he straight went out of it, and he went and asked a woman in the control center where I was and who the other pilot was. So he went to the control tower just to check who was the other pilot and where he was actually when he could not see anything but darkness. I wanted to say thank you. He wanted actually to thank the other pilot. She looked at me very strangely. The woman at the control center looked at him in a very strange manner and then laughed. Another aeroplane up there in the storm? No other aeroplanes were flying tonight. Yours was the only one I could see on the radar. Radar is a detecting instrument, and it is used to detect the angle, range, and velocity of other aeroplanes or ships, and it works on radio waves. And so she couldn't see any other aeroplane on her radar. So this man was so puzzled. And so who was that aeroplane? He clearly remembers he had seen an aeroplane. And so he is a bit disappointed, and he started thinking over it. So who helped me to arrive there safely without a compass or a radio and without any more fuel in my tanks? Who was the pilot on the strange black aeroplane flying in the storm without lights? So the man in the story as well as the readers are left puzzled, and we are left to make our own guess. And so that's the story of the black aeroplane. And you have two assignments that is on page 36. You have a speaking task here. Where you are asked to make a presentation on any of these 4 topics. That is, you get progression of models of airplanes, then progression of models of motor cars, birds and their wingspan, migratory birds, tracing their flights. So you can choose any of these topics. You are left to go for any of these topics and make a presentation. It can go up to 2 pages. What are you supposed to do? Progression of models of airplanes. How did it begin? The first model. How did they improve the aircrafts, and how the airplanes went on improving, and the final and the modern aeroplanes. Similarly, the models of motor cars, or if you are interested in birds, you can go for the birds and their wingspan, have a comparative study. Or even migratory birds, where the route they take, or anything else based on that. And one more assignment is there. It is based on the challenges you faced while learning something new. They have given the example of riding a bicycle. What are the challenges you face then? Often you fall down, you almost give up the attempt. And similarly, learning swimming. While learning swimming, initially you have that fright whether you get drowned or not. So you are asked to describe the initial attempts that you made and the challenges you faced while learning such a skill. Now we will wind up the class by watching another video which tells us how risky the job of a pilot is, and it requires presence of mind. And presence of mind is an inevitable character, a trait which should be found in pilots. And here you find similar instances faced by different pilots and how they tackle the situation.
Hi there. Aviation is one of the safest modes. Even when the control system fails, the engines fail, or the chassis is not released, the passengers on board still have a considerable chance of successfully landing on the ground. In extreme situations, it is us the human mind comes to the rescue.
ആ ഇന്ന് ഗെയിം കളിയാണല്ലേ?
Hello? Hello? Hello, Krishna? Did you enjoy the video? Good morning. It was not played. Okay. Eh?
Her network will be slow. Her network will be slow. That is why.
Maybe your network was not so that efficient. Okay, okay. Okay, it's okay, it's okay. How are the classes? You need any changes? You can understand? Everything clear? Okay, okay. Hi, Fisa. Seeing you after a long time. Good morning. How are you? How are you doing? Okay. Nice meeting you. I think I can make you speak on the topics given to you. Just be prepared for the next class. I'll call you one by one. Okay. Rather than going for a lengthy one, I should see different points. See that you include maximum points, then dragging 1 or 2 points, okay, to 1 or 2 pages. Yeah. Hi, Edwin. Hello. Good morning. How are you doing? Enjoying this mode of teaching? Or I know you will really miss the other one. Okay. Let us hope that we will be able to meet at the earliest. Okay. Don't worry. Just make use of the time and learn properly. Yeah? Okay. Thank you. See you in the next class.